Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the ReQuest. It is me, Captain Logan, and joining me tonight, as always, is Austin, the Day Ghost. I have my slides all mixed around, so I didn't get the ReQuest logo up. And I'm not even wearing the ReQuest shirt tonight, but it is, I swear to God, a requested review tonight.
What are you doing? You're off your game.
Which is a lot. Yeah, I feel that way entirely this evening, but we'll see how this goes. I'm very scatterbrained. I got a lot of my brain right now working on the Rewind movie, and gotta get my head out of that and into comic reviews. And we're gonna do 2 comic reviews this week. So this is basically, of course, a vault. But somebody requested it, so we call it a request. And then tomorrow night we'll do a vault, which will be like a request, except it's not requested.
It's requested by you, sir.
Oh, that's true. Yes, I requested it, and then I accepted my request.
Exactly.
And you notice we have to pronounce it differently because it's not that show. So it's not a request; it's just a request. And I requisitioned myself for the Anyway, tonight's requested review on The ReQuest comes from Joe Turner, who asked us a long time ago, because we've got quite a backlog right now, to review the first volume of Matthew Vaughn and Fiona Staples' Saga, which first started publishing back in 2012. And Austin, I think this only finished, like, kind of recently.
Yeah, I saw people chatting in the Discord about, like, is this book still going or not? And I wasn't really sure. I forgot to look into it.
I think I saw somewhere that it ended and it was done at like 66. But I didn't look too deeply into it, and I didn't do even as much research as I usually do for stuff tonight, because as I started looking at articles and wikis and things, stuff started getting spoiled for me, and so I shut that down. I was like, I don't want to know anything if I decide to keep reading this book. And honestly, I haven't decided yet, like if it doesn't come up again for some other reason, if I'm going to keep going with this. But if I do, I don't want to be spoiled down the road for everything that's going to happen. So, I was reading things about the main female character, and it was like, see, I don't even want to give anything away, to you or anybody else that might not read ahead. But anyway, there's something that happens in like issue 18 that, like, I read 2 lines of a biography about her, and then that came up, and I was like, well, come on, I didn't want to know that.
Oh no.
It wasn't a big deal, but once I realized that, I was like, oh, I'm going to start finding out about character deaths and all kinds of stuff. So I don't know a great deal about the background with this book. And as usual for a request or a vault, with comic reviews, we're going to talk primarily about what we read anyway. And anybody that's real familiar with this, if you're watching live or leaving comments after the fact, do us a favor and don't spoil anything in case we decide to continue on with this. So we're only talking about the first volume, which is the first 6 issues. Like I said, I think this went somewhere around 66 issues.
Yeah, 66 was the number I saw.
Vaughn was doing the same thing with Paper Girls, where he would it would come out monthly for a X number of months, and then he would take a break, and it wouldn't come out for a while. And I assume that was because of other things he was working on. It might have been artists catching up, or that might just be like a healthy schedule that he had so that he could take time off from things and to keep his quality high, because Vaughn has a reputation for consistent quality of work, and that might be, I've always speculated that might be one of the ways that he maintains that.
Oh, okay. Yeah, and is this the first Vaughn thing I've read? Possibly. Nothing's coming to mind.
Yeah, I've read about half of Y the Last Man, which I was reviewing with Connor at one point, and we fell off of that, and always meant to come back to it. And if we still kick around just binge reading the whole thing and doing like a real epic, overall kind of podcast review of that. And I've also read about half or maybe a little bit more Paper Girls as it was coming out. I've never sat down and read that in chunks or all together, but so I have a decent history with this writer, and typically like his, well, I say typically, I like his stuff a lot.
Mm-hmm. The closest I've gotten before this is the Runaways show, because that's adapting things that he wrote.
That's true. I've also read Runaways. I forgot that was him. Yeah. Because what's funny is I think of Vaughn, and he's unique for me in this. I think of Brian K. Vaughan for his creator-owned work before I think of him for any of his mainstream work.
Hmm.
I don't really have that with anybody else. Like, I mean, even Morrison, who, like my favorite Morrison stuff, like Klaus is creator owned stuff, but then, obviously I know about his and can cite very quickly his mainstream big two stuff.
I guess like Kirkman maybe.
I mean, yeah, no, that's true. That's true. There was a time where that wasn't the case because I'm a big Marvel Zombies fan.
No, of course.
Because I'm like an old person now, and there was a time where not a lot of people had heard of Walking Dead, and I hadn't read it, but loved Marvel Zombies, and then that got big. But of course, he got big for creator owned even a little bit before that.
Well, I was thinking a little bit of Kirkman while reading this because his newest book, I was wondering if he was taking influence from this.
Um, what is that book?
It's called Void Rivals. I just started
I've heard
it.
of that, but
Yeah,
I don't know anything about it.
it's part of the new Transformers and G.I. Joe comic universe. It's all under Kirkman. He's like running it. And he made like one original book in that realm.
So I'm sorry, I'm distracted because I'm a little rusty on my comic history, and I'm sitting here going, okay, yeah, Invincible was before Walking Dead, right?
I'm actually not sure.
I thought that
Probably, I
started
think
publishing
so.
before that. That's what I meant when I said I thought he started getting big for independent before that, but
Mhm.
I actually don't know for sure if I'm right about. I think that's right though.
Yeah,
And this is the
I think
first
so.
thing Brian K. Vaughan publishes for Image. Or I should say, with the Image, because the whole reason he brings it here is because he wants to retain rights to his characters. This is
Yeah, because it was
apparently.
supposed to go to Vertigo.
Oh, I didn't know that. This was apparently a thing that he came up with, like, all the way back in school, like junior high or high school.
Yeah, he pitched it to Vertigo. I only learned it recently from the Garth Ennis interview with Mark Millar the other day, where they talked about Vertigo, and I'm pretty sure it was Saga that they talked about that he went to Vertigo with it, and they were willing to print it, but they wanted the rights to it, and he didn't want to give it up. And fair enough.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I think he had such good experience with that he's just continued doing that with things.
Hmm. Yeah, exactly.
Uh, because why was Vertigo, right?
Yes? Question mark.
Well, I was reading it in hardcovers, so it didn't like jump out at me where that published, but I'm pretty sure that's where that
Yeah, I'm
was.
pretty sure
That
it
had
is.
to be a DC thing. Like, where else would that have been? Because he wasn't publishing with Image yet. And it's not like he went to Dark Horse or somebody. Dan Schneider, $5 super chat. I think we can all agree Vaughn's magnum opus is his X2 tie-in with Wolverine and Sabretooth. I forgot he wrote that. Okay, so that is the one kind of phoned-in Vaughn thing I've read. That thing's hilarious. I forgot about that.
I don't know. This sounds like his best work. I think I agree.
You will when you read it, I guarantee it.
Mhm.
But that's just you and your sensibilities. That would be an objectively incorrect opinion, but that will be your opinion. Anyway, so real quick, let me just give you my background with this book. I had read the first couple issues of this, and I own them in singles because King, who used to work with us on the channel every now and again, good friend of ours going all the way back, loved this book. He was kind of obsessed. I haven't talked to King in a long time, but he was obsessed with Vaughn, and he insisted that I try this, and so he sent me the first, I think, 2 issues in singles, which is really cool of him because they're first printings, and this is not a inexpensive book in singles now. So I really appreciate him for giving me those for my collection. But anyway, I looked at it and it was just not my thing. I had even more wholesome sensibilities than I do now at that time, and it read like I could right away tell that it was an interesting world and that it was real new and different and trying something I hadn't seen before. But at the same time, it was also a lot more kind of vulgar and crass than I was just interested in reading, and I had a real hard time getting past that, and so I never read forward because of that. And it was a more easy read this time just because of all the stuff that some of you guys have made me read. that like now I've kind of spread my wings and opened up my palate a little bit, and I can handle a lot more of that kind of stuff. I can't say I always hate saying this in a review because I want to talk about the quality of the thing and how well it executes what it's trying to execute. But like, is this my cup of tea? I mean, at this point, yes and no. Right, like, and that's why I say I'm not totally sure if and when I'll keep reading this. I have the same thing that I do with things like Invincible, like The Boys, where like I recognize how good that stuff is, but like I gotta be in just the right mood for it. It's so violent, it's so vulgar, and so that's not me being a prude going, "Ooh, that stuff's wrong. You shouldn't put it in things." And I wouldn't even necessarily call, well, we can have the is this too gratuitous conversation both with sex and violence, but like that's not even what puts me off to it. It's all I just personal taste.
Hmm. Yeah, fair enough.
That's just a me thing. So I don't know. I just want to get that out of the way right off. But being more familiar with Vaughn now, it was certainly easier and more fun to look at this time around. And I wouldn't recommend you just read the first two issues and stop. I think to really give this book a chance, you've got to read the first trade.
And I'm guessing that's just the first 6 issues that we read.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I wasn't entirely sure, but that makes sense.
That's what I think anyway.
Hmm. Yeah, and I didn't know anything about this book except I think I remember watching Eric review it back in the day, and I specifically remember the guy with the horns, and that's it. So I knew like a guy with horns was in this book.
Yeah, well, and I think I also had kind of an aesthetic thing with it too, because I can't deny that Fiona Staples is a great artist, and the art certainly suits the book. I'm just not a big fantasy person, and
Mhm.
this is obviously like science fantasy is the right category, but even beyond Star Wars, I would almost, if I could give it my own personal classification, this kind of thing is traditional fantasy set in space to me before it's science fantasy, in that like Star Wars has magic, but it reworks it. It calls it something else, and this is just straight up magic. Like it's more familiar if you're a fantasy person, where it doesn't have lightsabers, it just has swords.
Mhm.
It doesn't have the Force, it has magic. But it's also got science stuff too, because it's in space and there's technology, but there are even magical ways to get to space.
Mhm. Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's probably what Tolkien's world looks like when you get that far into the future.
Sure.
Maybe.
Yeah, exactly.
Who knows?
So you're with me on that point.
Yeah, no, I agree with that.
It does read very traditional fantasy, which is refreshing, especially if you're more into that kind of thing than I am. But even I'm really appreciating that, just because it's not a thing. Like a lot of people kind of shy away from like straight up fantasy in a different setting, and so it's kind of cool to see that just lifted and thrown into something else. But I also really liked the hodgepodge of like in not being on Earth at all, like
Mm.
because a lot of fantasy will go to what looks like the Middle Ages, but it makes up all the locales and everything. So this does exactly that, but with space, right? And
Mhm.
so you just have a blend of a lot of different cultures, especially visually, and that was one of the coolest things about it to me.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think for me, just reading these first 6 issues, it does feel weird to talk about in that I feel like we're reviewing like the first 3 chapters of Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
Like, and I think that's a little strange. But I mean, what can you do? Like when you're cutting it off at a certain point,
And
like
you just mean it's strange in that we have to talk about it now, not in that it's conceived that way, like
yeah,
or
no,
presented that
it's more
way.
so just talking about it in that like I feel like we have like a chunk, but with not knowing where exactly things are going, like it's hard for me to tell, exactly how I feel on certain things, and because we don't have the full package in a way that is maybe easier to talk about in another book. Like it feels much more like first impressions than like a straight up review.
Yeah, and it's not. It doesn't really read like an arc. You know, like
Mhm.
it's the first 6 issues. It's not a 6 issue arc. Not exactly.
Mhm. Yeah, exactly.
I mean,
And
there is kind of a climax in the last issue, and there are big major things that happen, but it kind of feels like we're just moving right on to the next thing. Like I
mhm.
like it's a cliffhanger before it's like here's the first, like this would not make for a real satisfying first film. I feel like you got to go farther than that if you were gonna make a movie.
Mhm. Yeah, for sure.
Like
Yeah.
Alita. It's like Alita.
Oh, so they'll make one movie and it'll bomb and that's
Yeah, and
it?
then they'll never make another one, and I'll love it, but be really unsatisfied with the ending because they didn't give me enough. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, but I don't mean that in disservice to this book, because
That's what I was gonna say. I think it gets plenty done.
yeah, I know. I'm just talking about like it's weird and formatting talking about it,
Yep.
but I was right with this book like pretty instantly. I think this book's great.
Well, I can tell right away. This is just very much your kind of thing, right? Like
Mhm.
I'm talking about Star Wars a lot, but obviously it's got a lot of Guardians in it.
Yeah, no, that's true too.
It's like Guardians if you had a family dynamic with like a traditional family in the first place, as
Mhm.
opposed to a bunch of people that come together.
Yeah.
I
Well, now if I ever meet Gunn, I need to ask him if Contraxia from Guardians 2 is a reference to Sextillion, because it's not out of his wheelhouse to jump into kind of adapting other things. Like he did that with Guardians 3 in that Morrison animal book. It was like Web 3 or something. I forget what it's called.
Well, and this feels exactly like what he would have done with Contraxia if he was working in a different medium or wasn't making a movie for Marvel. Like
Yeah.
it's the same thing, but it's like it's way worse. It's way more screwed up, but that's just because Vaughn's allowed to go farther. That leads me to this super chat. Bob the Hun, $5 super chat says Vaughn said he wanted to do something that could only be done in comics and wouldn't be possible to adapt it in another medium, both in how weird and how vulgar it is. Yeah, I read that too. This is I love stuff like this that's so like blatantly unapologetically comic book, but also that like works really hard at not being adaptable. And it's obviously the main thing to go to when you talk about unadaptable comics is Watchmen, even though we adapted them. That is a thing that is intended to be a comic book and has no interest in anything else. And this reads that way to me also. And some of that, like Bob the Hun said, is in it's kind of interesting the way our mediums work in this country, where with comics, especially if you're publishing with a smaller publisher, but with Image, that doesn't mean that it can't get popular. You might be allowed to do pretty much anything you want to, but like no matter who's putting out a movie, there's stuff in this you'll never get away with. No matter how independent it is, there's stuff here you'll never see in a film.
Well, and it's a ratings thing too, like
Yeah,
because you're not gonna be able to get it under R, and you're not gonna have the budget to make it look like this. Like,
that's why I'm saying that.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's the place where comics are really interesting in that you roughly cost like the same amount to do whatever your book is.
Mm-hmm.
And ratings are also kind of weird in comics.
Yeah. I and it's not going to necessarily affect your bottom line too much if you and might help it honestly if you're pushing those kind of envelopes and getting crazy with it. And
Mhm.
I obviously prose is the same way, like novels are the same way, but the difference is that's just text. And so as far as the content goes, you might see some of what's here in a book, and we'd be real unabashed about it, and not be scared of some of the super sexual stuff, some of the real crass issues we're dealing with, like child slavery and stuff like that. Uh, but it's I. But that's not the medium that Vaughn wants to work in, and
Mhm.
he's not going to be able to, obviously visualize it and create these characters the way he wants to create them. But there's a universe where this is a novel. Like there's a universe where this is Lord of the Rings or something.
Yeah, no, I can see that.
Dan
Then
Schneider
then the
couldn't
comic
you
book action doesn't work though
right.
as well.
That's right. No, that's true. Yeah, and this is fairly action driven. Like maybe I'm not thinking about it that way enough because there's a there's a decent amount, and I appreciate this about it of just stopping to like explore and discuss things. But yeah, there's a lot of action here too. Dan Schneider, couldn't you do this animated like the Invincible series? I mean, I suppose you could, but there's still some things here I don't think you would get on television.
Hmm.
But Prime does really push the envelope. Also, that when he said that, it was like 12 years ago, and
Yeah.
there wasn't a place for it then. So he's right. Like if it could be done, that would be the way to do it. Like at this point.
Sorry, I got distracted by the next super chat. Yeah, that's probably the way to do it at this point. I agree.
I'll just go ahead and read that real quick then. James Egan, can you guys do Wonder Woman 2017 or Age of Ultron next on the Rewind commentaries or anything else you disagree on? I want to see you guys fight.
Yeah, you were saying that, and then I saw that, and it made me chuckle. So
Dan Schneider just wrote streaming with a question mark. I'm not sure what he means by that. But yeah, I mean, like in 2012 we were at the infancy of that, and he's right. I mean that has definitely allowed people to do more. I wasn't even thinking about animation, and I wonder if that's if animation would be the one loophole where Vaughn would be open to it.
yeah, I don't know.
But I don't need that, especially for stuff that was really conceptualized as a comic book in the first place. I mean, because I was also going to say the other side of that is, or the second part of it, I should say, is thematic, where he is. And I mean, like, I guess you could do this in animation also, but thematically at the very start, this book is all about the creation of an idea, like as the creation of a child. So he's paralleling those two ideas, and he's talking about sorry, I've lost my train of thought.
They're okay.
He's talking about like art as in comics as a medium that takes more than one person to make, which I mean is not always the case, but he's talking about like in his mind sometimes when art is more effective is when you have more than one person working on it and putting their two heads together and creating something wonderful. And he parallels that with creating a child, where you've got to have the mother and the father, or that person is going to be a very different person.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And I'm interested to see where this book goes, because we kind of have three, we have an A plot and then two kind of side plots,
Right.
and both have some sort of child involved. And I'm interested to see how they continue to parallel each other and where those go.
Austin, would you go ahead and just give us a brief synopsis of the
Yeah.
6 issues? It was challenging to pull art for this because there's a lot of nudity, and I did the best I could. I didn't, so obviously I'm not going to show everything because I can't. And yeah, some of the violent stuff I threw in here, but some of it was some of that was even grotesque enough. I ended up not using. But anyway, hopefully I didn't accidentally miss anything. As far as nudity, like there's a whole character that I can't show very much of, just because she's always topless.
Hmm. No, that is true.
But I did my best, so hopefully I don't get flagged or anything. But
Yeah, so this book takes place in a sci-fi fantasy world where there are two warring groups. There's like the winged people, and then the like fairy tale magic horn people, and two of them fall in love and they have a baby, and everybody wants to get them and their baby, and they hire some bounty hunters to get them. And one of them goes off onto his little side adventure where he goes to a sex planet, uh, where where he's not interested in any of the sex. So a guy offers him a 6-year-old, and then he's like, "I gotta save this kid. I gotta get her out of here because she's a sex slave."
I'm sorry, let me stop you for just a second because I
Yes.
read James Egan's super chat, but I forgot to answer it.
Oh
I,
yeah.
I I don't know what we're doing for the very next show, after Batman Returns next week. So sorry, James Egan. I just I appreciate the super chat, but I didn't want to stop everything to talk about our other shows. Um, but you left a super chat, so I certainly
I
should
mean,
answer, but I just forgot to.
Batman Returns might be a punch out fight one. We'll see. Probably not though.
I don't think that'll be a
Probably
punch out
not.
fight.
Maybe the next one can be a boxing match.
Yeah, I mean, I want to put at least a few in between the next one of those, probably. Like, not because I just can't handle conflict or anything, but just because I don't know. Like, we just did Powerpuff Girls, and that's a favorite movie of mine, and Austin didn't like it at all. So just for the
Kev's
sake
still
of
broken up
variety, I kind of
about
want
it.
I kind of want to. Sorry, what?
Said you're still broken up about it. I'm
No,
sorry.
not really. I don't know how fun it is to have too many of those real close to each other.
Yeah.
It is a little challenging in. See, now we're just talking about this. It is a little bit challenging in that format to disagree as much as we did in a thing like that, because I get a little bit distracted. Like either gushing about something or doing very deep analysis when I'm talking with a person that is not feeling any of that. And so like it isn't that I censor myself because Austin doesn't agree with me. It's just the vibe is different, right? So it's like you have to keep forcing yourself to say what you would say anyway when you know that that like your singular captive audience while you're talking that's actually there with you is not even with you on anything you're saying. So like that's a little distracting. There's no way around it.
Yeah. The Wonder Woman and I guess Age of Ultron. I didn't even think about that one as being a major disagreement one, but they will be coming one day.
Yeah, I mean, Ultron won't be probably as much of a fight, although I've been a little bit leery of going back to Wonder Woman. Um, but I mean, I'm still gonna gonna like that a lot more than you. But like Ultron, I guess I mean like I technically like more than you do, but like um I just don't think it's real effective in the format it's in. I still say that really needed to be a season of television to flesh the whole thing out.
Hmm. Yeah, for sure.
It rushes so hard. But some of your issues with it don't really bother me, I guess. But I don't
Mhm.
like they're valid. I don't know. I'm
Anyways,
not upset about it.
there's also a Spider Woman that's a bounty hunter.
Sorry for stopping everything about that. Oh, sorry. There was another thing I wanted to bring up before you kept going with the bounty hunter, the
Yeah,
Will.
the whale.
I
Yeah.
I love the I love the way their titles work. He talks about himself like his first name is the. And I just love that. Like he never says his name without putting the in front of it. And at one point, Vaughn goes all the way where it's like first name technically the, and I was
Well,
very happy with that.
isn't it the like Mister? And he was like, actually, no, it's the.
Oh, is that what it was? Okay.
Yeah, like it's the replacement for like Mister Doctor.
No,
He's the.
that makes a lot more sense. But either way, it's really funny.
Mhm. No, that's a good bit. And he also has a cat tiger that looks like the He-Man tiger, but
Yeah.
uh,
So the thing
he's Lion Cat.
yeah, Lion Cat is a cool idea. That's a great device. Like
Mhm.
he's basically walking around with an animal lie detector,
Mhm. Yeah, exactly.
and he already is getting dramatic mileage out of that in a couple of different panels. But a question I wanted to ask you is, he goes to, I keep wanting to call it Contraxia. He goes to
Sextillion.
the Sextillion, the sex planet, and the only thing he's thinking about when he goes there is well they've left this contract open ended. They're keeping me on retainer because we don't really have very much in the way of clues as to where our targets are, and then they've farmed it out to all of these other bounty hunters, which is a great explanation for how to motivate them to do the job quickly. I liked that. And he's got like an open-ended credit card basically that he can use on anything he wants to while he's taking care of this. And he's like, "Oh, I'm just gonna spend a bunch of money on prostitutes with this card." He goes there and immediately, like you said, he's not interested in any of what he sees. I have to talk about this somewhat cryptically because of the subject matter. He's on this channel. He's like, this is all boring. Do you have anything like less conventional and more interesting? What do you think he was after?
I don't know, because I was just
Because
more on the end of...
he just went there wanting prostitutes, and I'm like, what I shouldn't want to know. I guess I shouldn't care, but like, what crazy stuff is he into
I mean,
that he's actually looking for?
His previous lover was a like 8-armed spider woman.
That's probably what it is. He's probably looking for someone that's
stuff that
not
happens.
that's not bipedal. I guess part of the reason I didn't think of that was because bestiality comes up before that, but I guess he's not into cats, he's into other things.
Mm-hmm. No, I'm sure that
this book is impossible to talk about.
I'm sure there's some messed up stuff, because even what's there, that's the vanilla stuff, is pretty wild.
I had to be really careful not to include any of that. But anyway, I'm sorry, would you go back to your synopsis?
Slip one in like Tyler Durden, but it just has to be one frame.
Well, subliminally.
Exactly.
Those pop up at you.
Tyler Durden on Sextillion. But anyways, yeah, so there's like a spider woman that is a bounty hunter, and she's the previous like gal pal of the Whill.
She's hard to show because she's topless.
Yeah, basically think of like a mermaid, but the bottom end is a spider and the top end doesn't have the clams, and that is what the Spider Woman looks like.
She's a cool design.
It is a cool design, yeah. And so she's also after the main characters, and then there's also a robot prince guy who the robots in this all have TV heads.
So I'm not, and again, we've not read past this, so anybody familiar with this will already know the answer to this, but I'm not prepared to say with certainty that they're actually robots.
Yeah, I'm not sure. That's just what they're called.
You're right.
Throughout, so...
Yeah, he's the robot prince.
Mm-hmm.
I like that things get personal for him toward the end.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, and he is also coming after the main characters, but he also just impregnated his girlfriend, wife, something.
Which is partly why I'm not sure if he's an actual robot.
Mm-hmm. It might be a living android.
Yeah, it could be. I just don't know yet. I'm like, is this actually his head? Or is it on top of his head?
I hope that that's just what their heads look like. And yeah, so he's after them too. So basically, everybody's trying to get these people, and they're looking for the rocket ship forest so they can get off the planet. And they meet a ghost girl that is going to help them, but as long as she gets to go with them. But in order to do that, she has to imprint on their baby.
Mm-hmm.
And that's about it. That's what these 6 issues are about.
Yeah, wow, you managed that without spoiling any of the big stuff toward the end, which we can do. We can talk about.
Yep. That is true.
Boy, there's so much here. I mean, like, let me reiterate the point that as much as I don't think this would really work, and again, I don't want to see this adapted, but like as, you know, a film-length piece by itself, for the start of a big epic series, it gets a lot done. And that first issue gets a lot done in the way of world building, in the way of characterization, setting the stage for everything, establishing tone. I think it's really smart that he gets arguably as crass as he ever gets in the first 2 pages. I think that's really smart.
Yeah, it really lets you know up front what kind of book it is.
Mm-hmm. Here's what you're getting yourself into.
Mm-hmm.
You know, first of all, like not comics for kids. Second of all, not comics for the faint of heart.
Lots of nudity.
Yeah.
There's gonna be some sex.
Yeah, and it's just not afraid to say or talk about anything.
hmm No, I was shocked when we got to Sextillion and we got to the child thing. I was like, wow, this is not where I thought we were going.
Yeah, I think the thing that most turned me off when I first tried to read this, and I'm just quoting, so like forgive the language, but I think the first thing that turned me off was like second page when she says suck my hemorrhoids. And I was like, I don't think I can read this book. Like that really that was a little much for me. Like I'm
Oh, that's funny. No, that's a good insult. I was like, I need to remember this. Save that in the back of the
that's
brain.
pretty good. Well, one thing I have sometimes with things, and again, I always hesitate to bring this up because I don't because I know I'll come off like a prude to some people, but sometimes I'm bothered by this is very specific, Austin, by things that I'm reading that's not exactly my thing, but that I know people that would love it if only they didn't have particular material in them.
Oh,
And
okay.
that can be a turnoff. Like on paper, these characters and just where we've gone with the story so far, my wife would love this, but I can't give it to her
Mhm.
because of some of the content that I just know would turn her off too much. So as soon as I read something like "Suck My Hemorrhoids," I'm like, well, crap, I can't show this to Sarah. She would love this. She would like this a lot more than me. Except she won't read a book that has that in it.
See, what I do is I just get people to look at it anyways, and when they get to that part, and if they come back to me, I just go, "Oh, yeah, I didn't really think about that."
Yeah, sure.
I like to sneak it in, but no, I get where you're coming from.
Yeah, and I know that you don't give that kind of thing a second thought, but you know, like I've got different circles that I kind of lead a different life than you do, and I just I think those things come to me very quickly.
hmm No, for sure, I get it. But yeah, no, I like this book quite a bit. I think it took me maybe a couple pages to be like, okay, like what is this book exactly? But after that, I was hooked pretty quickly, and I'm definitely gonna keep reading this.
Um, do you think it's sometimes like weird for the sake of being weird, or do you think some of the like really weird element? Do you think all the really weird elements go together to create one cohesive universe, or does it feel too kitchen sink? Because
No, I thought it all
those are
connects.
complaints I've heard lobbed at this before.
Oh, okay. No, I didn't really have that. It's interesting because, like, I'd imagine people probably have that because of the like fantasy and sci-fi mix, because it's not something that we're used to seeing. But I thought it all tracked and it all flowed. Everything felt of the same world.
Yeah, I think what I liked about it is how vast the the universe feels because of some of the stuff that maybe doesn't immediately feel like it should go together. Like I guess what I mean is the art style holds it all together. So like
Mhm,
it feels of a piece because you have a real unique perspective from an artist where she knows how to make it look like it's all of a piece. But like
mhm,
on paper again having like the TV heads along with some of the other stuff in this they don't it doesn't all feel like it should necessarily go together, but like it works because we're dealing with so many different planets and societies, and one of the things that fantasy does better than science fiction a lot is just diversity of creatures,
mhm.
and this is leaning in more to the way fantasy handles that a lot than science fiction does, or at least the way science fantasy handles it, right?
Mhm.
But where it goes even farther than Star Wars is it's not just a lot of crazy creatures; it's also some more like kind of old fashioned looking sci-fi stuff thrown in the middle of it. Also,
What I think what helps too, and it's where something like this works, and something like I don't know, let's say like Jupiter ascending, like that kind of big bombastic, weird for the sake of weird
Throw
sci-fi thing.
anything in the yeah.
Yeah, is all three main plots we're following are very human and very grounded. You have like a kind of Romeo and Juliet thing where you have a couple just trying to survive and protect their
Yeah,
baby.
good call.
Uh,
That's exactly what it is.
you have a guy that is trying to get over like a bad breakup, and then you have a guy that wants to go home but is sent out to war. Like those are your kind of three stories we're following so far, and I think that also really helps. And one of my favorite things about this book is the narration of it, where it's almost like if you did Terminator, but John Connor narrates the book, but you know upfront that John Connor isn't important and is just a guy, and the entire interesting part of the story is um, them almost dying as a baby.
Well, that feels almost calculated to me in that Vaughn feels the need to come out right at the start. And I mean, you could also tell that he knows where some of this is going. So having, I'm interrupting my point, but having a narrator that is a baby in the present of the story you're telling, but you know is going to grow up, just gives you a sense of like time scale, and that like the author knows what he's doing and he's going to a place. And like when you're writing retroactively like that and you're dropping hints about where things are going, it can, especially with something like this that's such a vast world with all these moving pieces and several subplots, it can give the reader like it can anchor the reader and make us trust the writer more. So like that's just a good device to give us something to kind of anchor ourselves in. In a weird way, it almost feels like our eyes in character isn't even in the story yet.
Mhm.
And so that's cool. But see, I can't remember what my original point was.
Well, I was just gonna say, I don't know where this is going. Obviously, neither of us do, but I kind of hope we don't get to see the future where she's narrating this. Like, I hope we don't eventually get there, but they could win
Yeah,
me over on it if they do.
that's exactly where I'm at with it.
Hmm.
The, what I started to say a minute ago is I think he's getting ahead of the criticism of, oh no, another chosen one story,
Hmm.
or a baby is the MacGuffin story. So he subverts that right away and says, I'm telling a different kind of story. And also he's telling a different kind of story from Star Wars right away, because it's not uh the it's not exactly the good guys versus the Empire thing. Like, it's a little bit of a different situation.
Hmm.
I really like what you said about with relating it to Romeo and Juliet, because it's like that if you're dealing with planets with warring species, instead of warring families.
Hmm.
And
Yeah, exactly.
kind of tantamount to the same thing. But so it's that sort of setup. So we're going to another kind of timeless classical tale, similar to what George Lucas did with Seven Samurai, but it's Shakespeare. It's a different tale.
Hmm.
So I like that a lot.
Hmm. Yeah, and that's the big thing that reminded me of that Kirkman book that made me wonder if he was looking at this, because that's kind of the main premise of that.
I Yeah, I'll have to check that out. But he's saying it's not going to be your typical chosen one story. In having her in narration say, "Yeah, I'm not a big deal. I'm not important," and then very quickly, I feel like he gets ahead of the MacGuffin thing by having a scene where the bad guys are like the TV heads. It's like, we're gonna the bounty hunter is like, I think it actually is the will. He goes, so you want me to just like kill the baby? And they're like, well, no, I mean, it's a child.
Well, then you also have the part with the Spider Woman where she comes for them, and then
Yeah,
the ghosts appear, and she thinks it's the horrors, the like big monsters that exist in the woods that eat people, and she's like, "Yeah, it's not even worth saving your baby. I'm getting out of here."
Well, and that's a cool place where he's going in a different direction than you expect too, because we've been kind of ramping up the fear of the horrors, and then it turns out that they're just these ghosts that can implant like scary nightmares in your head.
Well, both the horrors and that Spider Woman are ultimately more subversions. Like they're
Yeah,
kind of building them up as like these big scary things, and then we kind of take it away, or in the case of the horrors, there's something else.
something out. Well, and you also
Something else.
you don't expect one of them to turn into uh, a supporting character and
Mhm.
and a really likable one.
A
And then
floating ghost girl who's missing the bottom half of her body.
yeah, I love how imaginative this whole thing is.
Mhm. Yeah.
And
Uh,
that's just that's a big Vaughn hallmark where he just comes up with crazy stuff where you're like, where did that even come from? And like, it shouldn't work, and under another writer's pen it probably wouldn't.
mhm. Well, I love how.
But like you said, he's grounding everything in like relatable and like recognizable characters,
Mhm.
so it doesn't feel gimmicky, I guess, is my
Yeah, no,
point.
exactly.
Like,
I mean, it's the thing that we've talked about quite a lot, Cap, which is that you can do like these big bold things, and when you say grounded, you don't necessarily mean in realism. It's human emotion.
yeah.
Hmm.
And it's about it's just writing 101 stuff, man. I mean, he just understands the craft. So
Hmm.
it's about giving these characters like real motivations and real personalities and having them come from a place. So very quickly you know what both of your main protagonists are all about. But even as you, and this is why I say you need to read the first 6 issues and not drop off with two if you're not really digging it yet. And I wish I had done that in the first place,
Hmm.
because and like, I don't mean to contradict myself when I say I don't know if I'm gonna keep reading this. Like, I just don't know if I'll get around to it. Like I should. I'm sure it's great. You know what I mean?
Hmm. Yeah, my thing is like I'm definitely gonna read this. It'll probably be a little bit because I want to buy all of it because I hate reading it on sites. I hate the stupid pop-ups, and I'm like, I don't want to do that for 66 issues.
Yeah.
So it's like I'll read this, but it's gonna take me time to buy it.
But I was just gonna say, like, even in just 6 issues, the supporting characters are already really well developed,
Mhm.
and even your your central bad guy character, who at first just seems like kind of a stooge for the for kind of your stand-in for the Empire with your TV head guys,
Mhm.
and then he is also, like you said earlier, like he ends up paralleling our protagonist in a cool way. So he also has a family and he wants to get back for the birth, but he's not allowed to do that because he's forced to just stay out there, and he kind of has to be more loyal to the state than to his family.
Mhm. Yeah, exactly.
And it'll be interesting to see how his worldview develops, like how much he really cares about the state versus just being kind of molded by that and not knowing how else to handle things, because we haven't even really talked too much about our main protagonist yet, but you've got a couple from literally two different worlds that people don't even know if they can um, have children together, and they do, which is why immediately you assume that this is going to be a chosen one story, right? It's like, oh, this is the
Mhm.
first of its kind. It's gonna be it's gonna be like like the traditional Spock half breed thing, although even Spock's not that big of a deal until he just becomes really popular with the fan base, and then we start telling stories like that. Um, but at first, he's just a guy who happens to be just unique in that one way.
Mhm.
Vaughn remembers what that used to be like. Where like we used to be able to tell stories like that.
Mhm. Yeah,
Um,
and I'm expecting those two characters that are hunting the main couple to eventually like meet up with them, and then maybe they're companions for a little bit. I was expecting it in this first 6 issues, specifically with the Will. I was kind of waiting. I was like, okay, he's gonna be like the Han Solo, right? And then we're also given elements to say like, no, that's not what's going to happen. Like he is probably ultimately a really bad person, and we won't move away from that. But he also has a moral code.
Yeah, and like everybody seems to so far,
Hmm.
like different moral codes. But there are
Yeah.
lines it seems like all of our characters so far maybe don't cross. I'm really hesitating to do very much analysis with this yet because I don't feel like I have enough to work with.
Hmm. Well, that is one of the parts that I really liked, where he's trying to free the slave girl, and they're like, "I don't understand why you have an issue with having sex with a 6-year-old. You murder people
Oh
all
my
the time.
god. Yeah.
Why is that different?" And he's like, "Do I seriously have to explain the difference between those two things?" But they also talk about how he murders children, so like
Well,
that's also a thing.
well, he basically says if I have to explain it to you, there's no hope for you.
Hmm. Yeah, exactly. That scene was really good.
Yeah, and what's it, just the kind of relative morality thing. It's hard to disagree with him.
No, because the other person's like, yeah, with children, that's okay. Like, that's the other sides. You're like, oh, I don't agree with them inherently.
Well, because at first glance, it does sound hypocritical, and I mean, it is in the sense that the will has a code that most of us would find somewhat reprehensible, right? Where like, yeah, he is killing children, but it's everything is relative. So it's like compared to just getting hired to do a job and being indiscriminate about that job, whatever it is, and not being vicious or sadistic about it, and just you get a job, you've got to kill a child, you shoot the child real quick, she never feels it, you're done, you move on, versus all of the trauma involved with sexually exploiting children. And yeah, one of these things does seem a lot worse than the other, even though one of them is ending a person's life before they have a chance to live it. Like, both things are awful, but
Mhm.
very quickly I'm like, yeah, I'm kind of on the side of a child murderer. You know?
You're like, huh, maybe. Oh my God, now I'm blanking on his name. I almost said Boss Biggest, the villain from animated series, the spawn Billy Kincaid.
Billy Kincaid, yeah.
Like maybe he had a point.
No, no,
No, but
no, no. And I'm still never gonna have a popsicle again. But no,
no, but
Billy
exactly.
Kincaid was a serial killer. That is different, sir.
No, I agree, but no, that is one of the best parts about it. Is you go, okay, this person has.
And we don't know if he was a rapist, but I don't want to know that.
That is true. Okay, never mind. He might be both of them combined into one entity.
Yeah, because like, and like, sorry about the subject matter tonight, guys, but this is what the book is. But like, he was played kind of pedophilic,
That's true. That
but
is true. There is an element to that.
we just didn't go far enough to ever know for sure, which kind of makes it worse because your imagination runs with itself,
Mhm. Yeah,
which
exactly.
seemed kind of maybe intentional on McFarlane's part, or maybe some of it was just there were certain things that even he wouldn't do in that book because he didn't want to put his wife off. Because I don't know if you know about that, but I'm getting off track with this, but his wife was editing the book, and that was the issue that made her leave. She only got 5 in, and she was done.
Oh wow, I didn't know that. Crazy.
So he might have been trying not to push it too far, and that was still the issue that made
It
her
was still
quit.
too far. Yeah.
Yep.
But no, it's the type of thing where you go, okay, this person has horrible, god awful morality, and then this person also does, but they're right in this scenario.
And again, is still more respectable is not the right word, but you can still like see their worldview and their perspective and see this
Yeah.
guy as a human being because
Mhm.
there are lines he won't cross
It
and because
makes
he
them
is
sympathetic
consistent
to an
with it.
extent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when the terrible like sex slave master guy is like uh well how is what you're doing any different? Like at first glance you're like, well, maybe he's kind of got a point. And then but the thing is we don't even I don't know. when we first meet that guy, he already seems like kind of awful. We don't even know that the sex slave is going to be a 6-year-old, and then it gets just terrifying.
Mm-hmm. But at least that guy gets his head smashed in, so we can all cheer at that. That was like a Punisher Max moment. I don't know if you had that. We were like, we made these villains so awful that you're gonna cheer when they have like the most brutal death imaginable.
It's supposed to be really cathartic when you see that happen.
Mm-hmm.
And not only do we have a 6-year-old sex slave, but it's also a cliffhanger for an issue. So imagine you're I guess it's not the last thing you see, but it's just a couple pages before the end of that issue. So imagine you're also going to wait a month after you just learned that before you read the next one.
Mm-hmm. And my jaw dropped.
Yeah, mine too.
That was where you get left, because I was like, oh my god, like, where are we going with this? Yeah. No, it was crazy.
To what I was saying, sorry.
No, I just said like it was a crazy moment. Like my jaw dropped.
To what I was saying earlier about like mixing cultures and aesthetics, and I like how quirky it gets, and I figured that would be a thing that you would latch on to too, because that's one of the places where it's a little Guardians-esque. Like it's able to get away with like a lot of very contemporary ideas and slang and stuff, because it doesn't like even know about Earth, but Vaughn is just throwing all that stuff in to create his own world. So like I'm never thinking about that like I sometimes do with other things. Like when you do pieces that are supposed to be in our history but are like decades or centuries ago, and everybody just talks like they do now, and there's no attempt at making it seem to fit the period or be of any kind of style. I like how I don't know why Guardians gets away with that, given that it's like it lives in a world where Earth is. But I never mind it in that. I mean, in comics or in the movies. And this gets away with it even better because there is no Earth. But, like, it goes as far as to, like, just have people with cell phones and talking about how many bars they have. And, like that mixed in with all of the magic and stuff is kind of a fun hodgepodge.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like the type of thing that should clash, but doesn't.
Well, I think it does, and intentionally so.
Mm-hmm. Well, I just mean like in a negative way.
So
where,
you've
like,
got...
you read it and you go like, what?
Yeah.
Why are we talking about Twitter now?
Well, yeah, because the word I'm avoiding is anachronism, but like it's a bunch of intentionally like clashing anachronisms. So you've got the I've been on this cover for a while. You've got these like 18th century like British uniforms on the TV head guys. And then you've got like a train that's a Chinese dragon. Like it gets really bizarre.
Yeah, and the rocket ship tree that you can't even control. The tree just goes where it wants to go.
Well, and that's just I mean, that's not even like drawing from a cultural thing. That feels almost like a Douglas Adams choice or something.
Oh yeah,
where you've just got things in nature that have evolved to do space travel.
That's the dolphins all flying away.
Yeah, although that even feels, if grounded is the right word, a little bit more grounded than that, where it's like, well, it's just evolution. Like you've just got creatures that, like, even Star Trek has like spacefaring creatures that have just evolved to be in space. Mm-hmm. But this is quirkier than what Star Trek would do with it. I was reminded of Douglas Adams in several places. It does the same thing he does with the rings, with the like that Douglas Adams does with the Babelfish, where you've got to have some device so that everybody can just speak all the different languages. But we're not going to do it with technology like Star Trek does it. We're gonna do it in in this case, in more of a fantasy way. Douglas Adams does it with creatures that just, in Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, with just creatures that exist in nature on a planet. So you stick a fish in your ear and you can hear what everybody's saying. But here,
Oh, the ring thing's messed up.
yeah, here it feels like almost a blend of Douglas Adams and Tolkien, where like it's rings and people are after them, but that's your universal translator.
One, it's like the father in the main relationship. It's his high school sweetheart's grandmother's wedding rings that she gave to him, and he kept, and now it gave to his new wife. That's messed up. When that happened, I was like, oh my god.
You know what, though? I like his justification for it, where he's like, well, I thought we could use these, though.
No, I thought that was funny, but I was like, that is messed up.
Yeah, what did you think of that plot point? Because I worried for a second that it might read a little bit too typical or like forced drama. I always get leery with those with that trope where he's like, you're supposed to think that maybe he's about to die, and if you're reading this in issues, there's a chance that he's like a red herring character and it's all about her, and he's gonna die in the first 6 issues.
Mm-hmm. No, I was going back and forth on that, like whether he was gonna die. Like, it was very hard to predict.
I had seen later covers, having once worked at a comic shop, so I knew he lived past that. But
like I said, he was the only thing I knew going into this book, was there was a guy with horns.
With horns, yeah, and the like big long ears at the sides. But yeah, he what were we talking about? I'm sorry.
Well, yeah, because he has a high school sweetheart that he was engaged to.
Yeah,
Never told his wife about.
Yeah, and he's delirious, and they're trying to get snow for a spell so they can revive him. That was a fun idea. I was like, no, there's not any snow anywhere.
Like that they give rules to the magic, so there's like, some sort of stakes with it.
Yeah, it's limiting enough, and it doesn't feel like they can just pull whatever they want to out of the back of their heads.
No, it reminded me a bit of the Everything Everywhere All at Once thing, where it's like, in order to jump into a specific mind, you have to do something weird and quirky. It kind of reminds me of that.
That's a good point. That is kind of like a spell. Kind of like the random ingredients that you have to get for a spell.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, so he's delirious, and he says the name of his ex-wife, and I'm like, okay, that's a little TV.
Yeah, I was so with it at that point that I had full faith. I was like, this is gonna go somewhere I'm not expecting. There's no way it like devolves with this, right? And then it didn't really, I don't think.
Well, and like I'm still never sure how I feel about that trope, like just how easy it is for that to be the way that that Alana, or whoever the female character in the story would be, like finds out that he has a past that she didn't know about. That always reads a little bit too easy to me, where like you're dreaming and you say the person's name, and but
I mean, how we get it is definitely
where
easy.
It leads is fine. I like how relatively fair she is about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. It's not really the I'm gonna walk off angry thing.
Yeah, it doesn't lead to forced drama, certainly.
If anything,
she's as reasonable as you would expect her to be in that situation. Maybe she would be somewhat less so if he wasn't about to die.
Well, if anything, she should be more mad, because that ring thing is messed up.
That is pretty messed up.
That's a whole family heirloom that woman doesn't have anymore because he just took it.
Well, and it kind of suggests that Marco's just not great with the relationships.
Mm-hmm.
And you kind of wonder what other sort of mistakes he'll make.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'm sure we're going to jump into that even more, because where we end on issue 6 is that his parents show up.
Yeah. Which is a fun cliffhanger.
Mm-hmm.
When the main themes of your book, of course, are about like a new family coming together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm wondering if we'll see her parents, or if there's maybe something to that. See, that's what I mean. Like, there's just so many things where I'm like, oh, like there's so many interesting things they could do, And since we don't have any of that yet, some of it's just like, the possibilities.
Well, I was a little bit overwhelmed by, and like, not that there's any problem with structure, like it was difficult to follow, but just there were so many things I was curious about. I kept filing stuff away, and it was a little bit overwhelming. I like trying to keep everything in my head and wondering sometimes when Vaughn would leave a breadcrumb, like, A, does he know exactly where that's going? And B, are we going to get to it within these 6 issues? For instance, in the first issue, there's a place where Hazel, the narrator, who we know will grow up, and she even says she gets old. So, like, we know that she's going to have a full life at some point. And, like overall. And at some point, she says that there are all these men chasing her in her life, and that and that a lot of them have hurt her, but only one breaks her heart.
Mhm.
And he's leaving a breadcrumb, and I'm like, how long is it going to be before we know what that means? And does Vaughn know what that means yet?
Mhm.
And I love stuff like that. When
Well,
when
we
you're
even get
setting
that
up
with the will.
a big run. Say it again.
We get that with the will as well, where the narration calls him a complete monster, and I
Yeah.
think it's like around the sex slave thing. I can't remember if it's before or after that, but it's like we're already starting to see that he's maybe not the worst person imaginable, and then the book comes out and says he is. So it's like, okay,
Yeah, that's right. No, you're right.
something's gonna go
That's
down.
more than foreshadowing. It's like a character in the future knowing more than we do, retroactively giving us information, and that's a place that Vaughn's always had a great handle on this, where the show don't tell rule does not apply. Where sometimes flat out telling an audience something like that, and it is admittedly cryptic, is really effective because we know, and it works because of the perspective that it comes from, where it doesn't feel like some sort of cheat or something. Like Hazel would know these things, and she's a good storyteller. So a good storyteller is going to keep you engaged by going, put a pin in this, it's going to get interesting.
Mhm. Yeah,
And
exactly. It's telling you like
she
this
keeps doing
person's
that.
very intriguing. Like it's not going where you think. This is not Han Solo and Chewbacca.
Yeah, you're right. That's the other thing is it allows the writer through another character that is ostensibly not ostensibly that is telling the story. It allows the writer through that character to say, "Trust me."
Hmm. Yeah, exactly.
Like it's like you said, it's not going where you think it's going to, but like it's not going to be cliche. It's more interesting than you think.
Hmm. Yeah, because now I'm like, okay, when's the shoe gonna drop on this guy? Like, what stuff is he gonna do?
And another thing that I thought was really sophisticated is in that I'm not going to roll all the way back to show it because I don't even know if I have the page in here. But when he says, I don't know if you caught this, but when he has Hazel say, I was really hung up on this panel. One of these men broke my heart. 2 panels later, or like two, it's on the same page. A couple panels later, you are introduced to a weapon called a heartbreaker.
Oh, no, I didn't pick up on that.
Yeah.
Hmm. That's gotta be something.
Yeah, he's doing something with that. And I can't read it yet because I don't have the whole story in front of me. But is it her father she's talking about because he's got the weapon in that scene, and later on that weapon will represent his breaking her heart? Are we doing something else with that?
Hmm.
Just immediate, I don't even know where it's going yet, and I'm like, that is damn sophisticated.
Hmm. Yeah, no kidding. I just need to read this book. I need to drop everything I'm doing and read all this.
Yeah. See, I'm hesitating making a promise that I will, because then people will start messaging me and be like, "When are you? Did you read it?
Mhm.
You know, when are you going to talk more about it?" But like, I mean, I should. Like, I definitely should keep going with this. Um, I was disappointed in the death of
The Spider
the
Woman.
Spider Woman. Yeah. What is her name? Because she had a cool name and I can't remember what it was.
It's something. It starts with an S.
I'll get it here in a second.
The scale.
The
No.
stalk.
The stock. That's what it is. Yeah.
Because she's stalking her prey. She's the
No,
stalk.
of course. Mm-hmm.
And a lot of a lot of, I just can't think of the word I'm looking for. A lot of really descriptive names in this, particularly with planets.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, 'cause what's the main planet we're on? And this again starts with a C. It's the something.
Well, the moon is Wreath, and then the big planet that the winged creatures are on is called Landfall. And then, but what's the planet that Hazel is actually born on, that we're on through most of this? Cleve.
Cleve, that's right, yeah. That's
Yeah.
a lot of good names, yeah.
So I mean that one's, and like for this kind of fantasy thing, the on the nose names are great, and that's another thing that of course makes it very comic book. But the ghosts are stuck to the planet, and they're not allowed to leave unless they can imprint themselves, like you said, on bond themselves to a living person. So they're cleaving to the planet. They're stuck there, and that's also a double entendre name thematically, because Hazel, while she says that that planet is kind of unremarkable, she was born there, and so it has a special place for her, and so she cleaves to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
kind of wants to go back there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, exactly. And I also, one of my favorite moments with the ghost girl is when she's describing her abilities and like how her species, she's like explaining all of that mythology and how when they die they become ghosts to protect the planet, and she's like, well, you know, some survival tactic that is, because we're all dead.
Yeah, that's true. And then maybe the most, okay, I'm sorry, I gotta stop everything for a second and say, this entire time, like I said, I'm just kind of scatterbrained tonight. This whole time I've been trying to come up with the word collaborative. And it finally came to me anyway, because I was talking at the beginning about how this is about art as a collaborative medium, and I could not come up with the word collaborative.
About comics as a collective.
Yeah, exactly. I also really like, and I don't know if Vaughn was thinking this or if it was intentional, but I also like that, again, it's like a baby representing the creation of art, and the book itself has a mother and a father.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if he
intentionally
went to a female artist because of that, but there's a really neat meta thing going on here with the narrative itself.
Mm-hmm. Well, it could be that they got together to work on this, and then that came naturally out of their discussions of what they wanted to do with this book, maybe.
Yeah, it might have just been a happy accident, because Vaughn said that and again, it goes back to when he was.
Oh, that's true, because it went back to
in
when
school.
He was in high school.
Yeah, he said the premise for the whole idea was starting from that place of like making a piece of art, making a comic book is your baby.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah, well, because I also didn't pick up on the kind of meta narrative of the parent thing. So now, like, I want to go back through this book and read it, knowing that, because it's really interesting.
Well, and the timing, finally reading this for me is interesting. That part of it really spoke to me, Austin, because I just started work on a new novel I'm writing that also starts from that same place.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. That's true. That is really cool that kind of lined up in that way.
I'm not going to reveal the premise or talk about my own work right now, but I'm also writing a thing that's about like the creation of a character and how real those characters become to you as the writer, and how much it's like giving birth to a child. And all of
Now
that obviously also speaks to me because I am a father.
now I have become artist, destroyer of worlds.
Yeah, exactly. That's why you're right. It makes you feel like you got godlike powers. You can play God and nobody gets hurt.
Exactly. You can break anyone you want.
Yeah, I mean, because you can be violent, you can kill people, you can make people very happy, you can make people very sad, and because I always talk about fiction as the benign lie, where like you have all this power for a reader when it's working, when it's effective, because the reader feels like the people you've created are real, and it makes them feel something, and it does something to them, and it could even affect the way they live their lives moving forward to some small way, and so like you get to do all of these like terrible things in like the most positive way possible. You get to lie, you get to kill people, you get to narratively cheat.
Mm-hmm.
You
Exactly.
know,
You get to break all the rules.
because when I complain that things are contrivances, like everything in a story is a contrivance. The problem is when you see it, when it comes out at you, and it's a contrivance. So like,
Yeah, exactly.
you get to lie, you get to cheat, you get to murder. I mean, that's why you write. You get to be God.
Yeah, you get to abuse your power. It's beautiful.
I mean, I'm being hyperbolic. All the nice things that you do are good too. But like that's the reason that to be an effective writer, you have to be okay with killing your darlings and letting them get hurt.
Exactly. You got to be the fry box killer is what you're saying.
That's exactly what I'm saying. Yeah, and I mean, like, should you revel in it? Maybe sometimes.
Depends what it is.
I had another reservation.
Yes.
Because I'm with you. This is really, really well executed. There's just a couple of narrative tropes that I didn't care for that felt kind of
Kind of beneath the rest of the material.
That's yeah. You articulated that much better than I was about to. Well, I was just gonna say kind of trite, if nothing else.
Yeah.
But I mentioned one of them earlier with like saying the girl's name when you're sleeping. That old chestnut. The other one is, you will not be surprised when I say this. The other one is Prince Robot the Fourth. I love that. That like they're just. That's why I'm not sure if he's a robot, because they're all just like called Robot, and I'm like, is that just a motif? Is that just a thing? So
his name's just Four.
Yeah, they keep calling him Four, and they call him Four even I think before you get the Prince part. So for a while I was like, I can't tell if it's 4 or IV, and then it was clear that it was Roman numerals, which is funny because like there's no Rome.
That's funny. Now that you say that, I never had that moment. I always read it as 4, but that's weird because it also could have easily been IV.
See, I knew that was going to happen. Bob the Hun said, "Not that I care or am offended, but you accidentally showed nudity." God, of course I did.
We got that Tyler Durden slipping.
I blame Fiona Staples. Anyway, so, and by the way, I'll say this real quick too. Apparently, she had like this was super collaborative. Like there are entire characters that she creates herself for the book.
Oh, cool.
That he then writes. Like it's not just his script and she's drawing to it. Like it's a real collaboration in that way.
That's especially cool since it was an idea he had at such an early age that it wasn't like, this is my darling, don't touch it.
Yeah, that he trusted her enough to make her the co-author as much as she seems to be.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, I just want to get that point out there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, what's the second trait thing?
Oh, I'll say that real quick, and then I'll get to Chewbacca's lover super chat. I didn't see that. He's going to bring us back to Billy Kincaid. Anyway, the other trite thing, and maybe I can find the panel, is Prince Robot the Fourth has his hands on a book that, what's her name, Alana?
Oh, yes. I had questions about that too.
That she's been reading, and that's kind of their one clue about her. And the timing is weird, and even just the fact that he would think of it is weird. So he gets to. I'm trying to decide what order I want to explain these things in. She when they get off the planet in the tree ship, they're all like, well, where do we go now? Like, we can go anywhere we want to. And I thought that was kind of a nice heartfelt moment, and something I hadn't even thought about, which is from their perspective, like, the story's kind of over and the world is their oyster now. Like, people are still after them, but maybe they can hide and they'll never be found. Like,
yeah, like they're flying into the sunset.
yeah, that's a cool moment. Right at the end of this first quote unquote arc, where like we know that because there's still bounty hunters after them. They're, we know there's still a lot to come, and they don't. But anyway, she goes, well, where I would really like to go is to this planet where this super interesting smart guy I know of is. And I'm like, okay, I don't know what that's about. And then they're going to go there. And then it turns out that I think the idea is supposed to be that it's the author of the, trashy romance novel she's been reading.
Yeah, it is.
And Prince Robot the Fourth reads that whole book, and he keeps reading it when he's sitting on the can, which is kind of funny. And he gets to the very end, and we get the dossier of the guy that wrote the book, and a light bulb goes off in his head, and he seems to know that's where they're gonna go. Boy, that's pretty easy.
Yeah, I had that question too.
It's like he knows they'll go there because it's a planet mentioned at the end of this book. Like, how do you make the leap to they're gonna go there? I'm sorry, what?
So did the book also include the script?
Yeah, and that's a trope I never like. Like, Vaughn's not the first person to do that, where it's like, immediately after we know where someone is going, somebody sees the name of the place and knows they're going to go there. There's not enough connective tissue.
Yeah, I was wondering if maybe we'll, kind of expand that out after this when we get there, and maybe they are closer connected and there's more of a reason for that.
There it is. There's the panel. Quietus is where they're going.
Of course, the author who writes all his books and is smart lives on Quietus.
Yeah, and he's got one big eye.
Library planet.
Yeah, exactly. It's on the nose. I don't care.
No, that's great. I do wonder if maybe they'll expand it and it'll maybe make more sense later. But I did question that as well. I was like, that doesn't make sense.
Yeah, and I wonder how, because what would you add to it? We've got the whole scene where just he gets to that page and it's like, oh, Quietus.
It could be that maybe they have some sort of relationship that's pre-established that we don't know about yet, and maybe the Empire group knows that. So maybe him seeing that name, he was like, okay, these are two people that know each other. Maybe.
Oh, okay. No, that's
Possibly,
true.
I wondered that, but like I said, that's going to depend on where it goes.
So, anyway, that's the thing I had a reservation about.
Yeah, no, I did too.
Real quick, because we've already somehow been at this for well over an hour, but we still haven't probably talked enough about the main characters, and I just wanted to say that I like Vaughn's take on the relative pacifism of Marco's character, because this is another place where he really flips the script and it's not exactly what you're expecting. First of all, he's not a straight up pacifist like I thought he was going to be, where he makes a vow, kind of an arbitrary vow to himself, or at least from Alana's perspective. I will never take up arms again. I meant to make this point earlier, but the thing that brings them both together is that neither of them agrees with the war that their respective peoples are at. And that seems like kind of, an easy generic starting place. And then we really expand on it when we get to the 5th issue, I think, where Marco, his worldview is very in line with the reason that he refuses to fight in the war, which is not just I think killing people is bad. War is bad. It's war is stupid. And it really kind of encapsulates, it really kind of distills down the whole like kind of inherently absurd problem with feuds, with like decades and century long feuds between peoples, between families, like whatever it is, where it feels like the kind of war where they don't even know why they're fighting anymore. Like they're just fighting. And Marco's whole thing is war just begets more war. Like I don't have a moral problem with it. It's not a moral distaste. It's consequences. And so it comes from the opposite place of where pacifism usually comes from. And again, he's not straight up pacifist because he finally, like, he will fight to protect himself and to protect his family. So at some point, he finally picks up a sword and goes, okay, fine, I guess I'm going to have to fight. And then he actually gets too into it and gets kind of revengey, and has to be pulled back by Alana. And I really, like, suddenly I liked him a lot more in that moment where he's got this, and again, some of it's just writing one-on-one stuff where you've got external and internal conflict, right? He's got this internal war he's waging with himself, where maybe one of the reasons that he doesn't want to fight is because he's got an instinct and a taste for it when he really gets into it, and he doesn't like that about himself. Where like he doesn't want to just go on raw emotion. He's like surprisingly thoughtful and logical about it, and so. Marco's whole thing is, again, opposite from where I'm not going to fight, let's not kill anyone, usually comes from. It's actually about the ends before it's about, like you know, and justify the means. It's actually more about the means than it is about the morality. And usually it's, with pacifism, it's, I'm not going to hurt anyone no matter what the outcome is. So, like, if my not fighting means that 1,000 people inadvertently get killed, I'm still going to do that because it's the right thing to do. Marco's not about the right thing to do in that sense. He's actually utilitarian about it. He actually goes, in the long run, more people will get hurt if I fight because they'll come after us, and it just begats more violence. That's very fresh.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
And 12 years ago, I'd not seen that much.
Mm-hmm. No, and I was waiting for the like Old Man Logan thing, where it's like, okay, I'm a pacifist now, and I'm like, okay, we're gonna hit the point where he has to finally pop the claws, and then we do that almost immediately. Yeah, okay.
Sorry, Austin, hang on. Okay, go ahead. I lost my headphones for a second.
No, it's okay. I was just saying I was expecting it to go the Old Man Logan thing, where we're gonna really build out, like, okay, like I want to be a pacifist, and I'm gonna go through all these different encounters where I'm not gonna fight, and then eventually I'm gonna have my breaking point like that. I gotta pop the claws again, and then we do it like almost immediately, and that really surprised me.
Yeah, and it makes you kind of wonder about his background.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
And like, how far has he gone in the past? And I felt like, and maybe I'm partly seeing this just because it's Vaughn, and I read a lot of Y the Last Man, and that's very much about like gender roles and the ways in which men and women are wired differently. And I'm looking at this and I'm going, okay, what is he saying about masculinity versus femininity? With that, because it's kind of, even at this point, and there's a letter in the letters pages at the end of the second issue, because I read some of those, that was complaining at that point about Marco being yet another kind of effeminate, not very masculine character, and going, okay, Vaughn, this is all you ever give us. Like, you've got a super strong female character, and then you have a kind of emasculated male character. And if he had read the first 4 or 5 issues, he would, or especially by 5, I don't think he would have said that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with that.
And so
And I
he's
imagine that's
definitely
only going
got
to go farther.
he's definitely gotten away from that. I think Marco feels like a more effeminate character. And I mean, look, like the man can write effeminate characters if he wants to, but I don't think he's just repeating what he gave us with Yorick in Y the Last Man. It's not that character.
Yeah, it's just not going back to like the well,
Yeah,
where it's like this is what I do.
but I think it might be saying something about typical masculinity where yeah, everybody's different, but like, all things being equal, like men tend to have more of a violent instinct, particularly when they're threatened or their family is threatened. And he like realizes that about himself and has faced it in war, and so he's reeling himself back and is afraid of the consequences if he lets himself do that. So he initially looks like a not very masculine character, because he's staying away from that. And then we get the moment where he picks up his sword and he's about to murder everybody because they're after his family. And you go, oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
He's got that instinct and he's fighting it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he has to be like broken out of it, like he's in a trance.
Yeah, and you also, in contrast to that, have Alana, who is, at first glance, kind of a butch sort of tomboy female character, which seems like a very Vaughn sort of character to write, and she has very much a maternal instinct,
Mm-hmm.
and so you start to see the masculinity of your male character creep in, and the femininity of your female character creep in when they're first introduced. It feels almost like we flipped the genders.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. No, and that works really well.
So I like both of them a lot more by the end than I did at the beginning, or by the end of what we read.
Yeah. No, I'm liking all the characters so far. I think they're all really interesting, and they all have their own weird things going down.
Yeah, and they're all really memorable. I'm going to assume, and I'm sorry that whole thing was very long winded, but I
No,
felt
you're
like I
okay.
needed to talk about that. Austin, I'm going to assume that that the character you're most interested in moving forward is the Will.
Probably. I mean, I like all of them about equally, I would say, but probably
Okay.
because that's the main one where I don't know, where I have like no idea where it's gonna go. Well, I
Well,
feel like,
especially because everything we were building with him crumbles when you kill
yeah,
the
oh, the
stock.
spider lady, yeah.
I started that earlier and I never finished it. Or I meant to ask you about it. Like, were you kind of sad that she was gone already? Did it not feel like there was maybe more we could have done with her? Was that just killing her early because you're not expecting it? Like, I don't know how to feel about that until I move forward. But I was really disappointed with it.
No, I thought it worked because it was like there wasn't really much to her character, and like maybe you could have built it out, but like it wasn't like, oh man, like here's the interesting things they can possibly do with her. And it did really feel like they were building her out for his story anyways. So the fact that they then turned it around in that way, like she already only exists to build out his story, I think.
Okay, like once she's dead, that's obviously what's happening. But I thought we were building a parallel couple
Mm.
to our main couple, and I was kind of interested to see them actually come together, because that moment where he tells her, because he's avoiding her and is upset with her because she was sleeping around with other men. I thought it was really funny when she says that's in the job description. And then there's a place where he says, like over the like literally over the phone, because they just run around with cell phones. He says, um, you know, you're stupid. Don't you realize that I'm still in love with you? And he says that in a context where he's just trying to save her life, but I think there's truth to it,
Mm.
potentially. And it was kind of sad to me that we never had them on screen together.
Mm. No, definitely. And I mean, it was shocking because I was like, okay, like they're gonna get together and they're gonna save this child slave. Oh, I guess not. Okay, now I don't know where the subplot's going.
But yeah, and I'm just saying that with what we have here, because I'm sure
Yeah.
moving forward, we'll be like, okay, he's got a whole plan with him, and it makes sense that she's dead already.
Mhm.
And I also
Yeah, and
just I also just loved her design.
I mean, it's cool.
I thought, see, I'll go farther. I thought she had the potential to turn into my favorite character, and then we killed her, and I was like, what?
Yeah, fair enough. I think my favorite character will be the teenage girl because her intestines are hanging out, and that's
Well, and
funny.
then is she dead? Is she
Uh,
double dead?
no, I don't think so.
Oh,
Why would
okay.
she be?
Well, I thought there was a panel where when the parents show up at the end, they like magically do something to her. Yeah, she gets splattered up against the wall and it's blood everywhere. And I was like, what is going on? Because she's incorporeal, but it
Yeah, let me
looks
see
like
this.
she's splatted and killed.
Oh yeah, with that, I assumed it was just like the kind of ghost slime thing where like she kind of like poofs and.
But the very next panel is Isabel No, and I'm like,
Oh, maybe, yeah, maybe that. Okay, maybe she is dead.
that played very dramatic and violent and terrible to me. And
I mean, that's sad. Of the spider lady. Forget that.
well,
I'm
and
sad.
also, like, I want to say there's no way that she's dead. I mean, besides the fact that she's a ghost, but like you could have a ghost past, death past ghost. I mean, that's a thing, writers have done before. But I want to say there's no way Vaughn would get rid of her that quickly because having a ghost bonded to your child is way too interesting not to play out.
Yeah, exactly.
But with the stock, one of the reasons that I wanted her to stick around is because she almost kills Marco,
Mm-hmm.
and Alana having some kind of showdown with her later is like, comeuppance for that. Was I thought just a given. I thought the stock could have been almost a like arch nemesis for them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean that is possible. Like was possible. I guess not anymore.
No, it's not. I'm pretty sure there's no way she survived that.
No, I mean she did have a hole in her chest like that big.
The ghost is probably I don't know. They just go get some snow, I guess.
Yeah. No, they specifically say Dad is dead. There's no magic bringing that back.
Yep. Like you said, I really appreciate establishing all the rules.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
Let me read Shabaka's Lover super chat real quick.
Yes.
Super chat. He says, I think Billy Kincaid was supposed to be a child molester, but it got toned down to child killer. Same with Freddy Krueger. This actually happens a lot. Well, and again, the way he would lure kids into his ice cream truck, and the fact that it was usually, I think maybe exclusively girls, although I don't know if that's mentioned, and I can't remember for sure if it is.
Yeah, I can't remember.
Makes me think that it's intentionally vague where you could read that into it if you wanted to.
Mm-hmm. And Freddy Krueger dropping that was the right choice.
Yeah.
If you want to see that done that way, go watch the remake and you'll see why.
Oh no, really?
Oh yeah.
But again, I think it's worse with Billy Kincaid to not know for sure. It just makes it ickier.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
I'm gonna go as far as to say it's almost implied.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, both of them, I think, not just implying it, like actively showing it is bad for different reasons. Because, like you said, with Billy Kincaid, I think that makes it scarier. And with Freddy, he's suddenly not a fun, jokey serial killer thing when you have that to it.
No, Freddy Krueger can never be a catharsis.
Yeah.
If he's killing shit, like
you can't have Nightmare 3 without.
Yeah, obviously you're never full on on his side, but he has to be fun to watch, and there have to be people that you're kind of glad he killed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
And that's just like typical of those movies. Like there's even places with Halloween movies where you're like, yeah, I'm glad Michael Myers killed that guy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, exactly. That's why Jason doesn't kill kids.
It's a hard line to walk, but there's got to be some fun in it somehow. Anyway.
Yeah, exactly. But anyways,
Well, I probably changed my mind. I'm probably gonna keep reading this at some point. Or not change my mind, but I'm probably committing to it just because. Well, now the more we're talking about this, now I'm like, here's all these things I'm really curious to know what he's doing.
Mm. But then you wake up tomorrow, you're like, I'm too busy. I ain't got time for that. So whether you get there or not, it's all good.
No, that's a whole other story. There's no telling. But with the narration, I forget what property you brought up that reminded you of. I kept thinking oddly about How I Met Your Mother.
I also thought about How I Met Your Mother and almost brought it up earlier.
I'm glad I just remembered that because I wanted to say that at some point.
I almost mentioned that when I was like, I kind of hope we don't get to that.
Yeah.
Because it's not How I Met Your Mother. That's not where the story's going. But anyways.
Well, Austin, do you have any final thoughts, sir?
When I get money, I'm going to buy this book. And then I will read it.
Thanks again to Joe Turner for having us talk about this. And I know this is a long video for 6 issues of a thing that we keep saying we kind of wish we had more of to talk about, but that's how we roll. Austin and I always have a lot to say.
Exactly. You never know what you're going to get when we're on screen together. One second we're talking about Saga, the next Billy Kincaid and Freddy Krueger, and then the next How We Met Your Mother.
What you can't expect from me is wit, because brevity is the soul of that, and I'm not good at the brevity. Austin is not going to be happy about what we're doing next week. He already knows about it.
I don't know.
No, you do. You do. No. I told you the other day.
Oh, you do, Brian.
And you're already making the sounds I expected you to make when I bring it up again. But so Amalgamation has been like cryptically reminding me of a thing that he requested a while back that somehow didn't get on my list, and I felt bad about it. So we're gonna go ahead and do it right away next time because I owe it to him. I somehow didn't get on the list, but he requested it longer ago than everybody else on this list. So anyway, we're finally going to read some of those Stan Lee Just Imagine stories. And I don't know how long they are. He asked us to read the first volume of it, which I think is 6 issues. And
what? It's Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, Green Lantern, Flash, maybe Aquaman? I'm not sure.
And I don't know how smart it's going to be to do 6 of those at once.
But it also might make sense because we might not have a ton to say about specific ones.
Because they're basically just going to be concepts, right?
Yeah.
Like more than anything. It's going to be just him establishing what that character would be if you were to do a series.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know how wordy they are. I've never looked at them, really.
I feel like they're pretty wordy. It's been a while since I've looked at that.
It's Stan Lee, so probably so.
Yeah, exactly.
So we usually will do 6 issues of a thing, or just whatever the first volume is. If they're real wordy, or if we think we have a lot to say, we might just. I was gonna say we might cut it in half, but then I also feel bad about how long I've made him wait. So we can get it done. We'll just do it. I'm sure we'll just commit to it.
Yeah.
Anyway, thanks for your patience, Amalgamation. We appreciate you, man. As I keep saying, we are still pretty backed up, but if you want to go ahead and make a request, just be patient with us. We do these as close to weekly as we can. Every now and again, I've got a trip or the movie stuff or whatever, and I have to skip a week. But we try to stick to weekly. Patreon.com/Geekvolution. The $15 tier is where you can do that. You can ask for comics or a movie or a TV pilot. $30 gets you a commentary, and you can also do a rewind commentary at that tier instead if you want to. And in the meantime, thanks again, everybody, for being here. We sure appreciate it. I was Captain Logan, and this was Austin, the Day Ghost.
See ya, folks.
Bye, folks.